warm good evening, participants. Today we have a distinguished speaker in Mr. Aniruddha Sarkar, who is the CIO and the portfolio manager at Quest Investment Advisor since February 2020. Mr. Aniruddha brings in about 15 years of experience in the capital market by managing money for investors across PMS, AIF, and advisory businesses. Prior to joining Quest, he was with IIFL group of companies and he was the portfolio manager for IIFL Multicap PMS. And since its inception, Mr. Aniruddha was able to create a good alpha to the corresponding index, and IIFL Multicap PMS was kept at the top of charts on performance in the PMS category. Mr. Aniruddha is a Bachelor of Commerce and MBA in Finance. Today, Mr. Aniruddha is going to present his strategy, Sustainable Return by Sector and Stock Selection. I am drawing few examples to highlight how important it is to be in the correct sector at the correct time. Between April 2003 to December 2007, the best performing sector was capital goods, and it went up by 19x. And the worst performing sector was FMCG, and it managed only 216% in the same period. To extend the above example into the stocks of capital goods, companies like ABB, which has gone up by 24 times, and Crompton managed to go up by 44 times. Whereas well-established stocks like Hindustan Unilever was able to manage only 48%, which is a classic example how important it is to be in the correct sector to create alpha. The recent example for this top-down approach is between September 2020 to September 2021. Metal index went up by 158% during this period. Tata Steel has delivered 260% in the same period. Worst performing sector during this period was healthcare, which has delivered about 28% return, and only Divi's Lab was able to rank the index return during this time. Mr. Aniruddha blends the top-down and bottoms-up approach to create alpha by being in the correct sector at the correct time, along with buying undervalued securities at the bargain price, which makes him a unique fund manager. Now I hand over the stage to Mr. Aniruddha to present a strategy. Mr. Aniruddha, one small request for people for the participant to understand. Please, before getting into the presentation, please explain what is bottoms up, top down, and bottoms up approach. It's yours, Mr. Aniruddha.
Sure. Yeah, thanks, Mr. Shivaram, and a warm welcome to all my investors. And I think you've made my job much easier by giving those examples of those companies during those time frames which you mentioned. And I think this is something which over the last 8-10 years, practically we would have seen different sectors and different companies outperforming. And a common question which comes in everyone's mind is that, why this sector or company is doing well and why the other sectors are not performing well. As you mentioned, I'll just give a brief about what is top down and bottom up before we get into the actual discussion. Top down basically means wherein you try to take a macro picture. You try to understand where the macros are, where the economic cycles are, and you try to decide which sectors are going to do well, which sectors are going to benefit, and accordingly you pick up the sectors which you want to be overweight on. That is the top-down approach. The bottom-up approach is wherein you don't take care of the sectors. You just look at the companies as it is, irrespective of which sector they belong to. And you identify the companies, you look at the numbers, financials, and then depending on their valuations, their earnings cycle, you identify those companies and you invest in those. So this is about the bottom-up picking. What we have been following over the years, and I believe that is the right blend to be followed, is trying to marry the top-down and the bottom-up, wherein you keep an eye on the macro cycles, but you also need to be very, very selective in which companies you're picking up in those sectors, because I can pick up the best sector, but the worst company in that sector, then I can boast of being there in the right sector, but with the wrong stock. So the idea is that, you need to blend both a top down and a bottom up, wherein you select the sectors which you want to be in, and also you identify then the companies which are the biggest beneficiaries or the ones which will outperform the best in that space. Now coming to sector rotation, which is basically our topic of discussion today, and I think there will be many investors who would be very much aware about sector rotation, and I'm sure many of our investors with whom I would have interacted in the past would have also gone through my discussions, because sector rotation as a strategy is very core to us. And I have been a big follower of sector rotation, whether at IIFL or at Quest. And I believe that, this is something which has gone through the different cycles of the market, whether in the last 8 years, 9 years, 10 years, and practically it has seen the different ups and downs. But before we get into the sector rotation as a strategy for portfolio construction, it's very important to understand that why sector rotation happens, and why it actually makes a big difference to the portfolios. The main thing which drives sector rotation is the business cycles, and this is something we have all been there, seen it in the economy unfolding in front of us, whether in the last 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, 30 years. Business cycles are inevitable, and this is something wherein every time you see things going over the roof, you will find those warning signs coming in that things need to soften a bit. At the same time, when things are looking extremely bad, you will find people saying that things will improve from here. The whole reason for this is business cycles happen, and these happens because of the whole supply and demand in the economy, the movement of the GDP, the capital flows from developed markets to emerging markets, and also from one asset class to the other. And also because one big factor which leads to the business cycles is the consumer confidence. And that is something which is very, very subjective matter and cannot be quantified. Now, if I look at the business cycles, there are typically 4 phases of the business cycle. We can give it different names, like, some call it the trough, expansion, peak, and contraction. Some call it the early cycle, the mid cycle, the late cycle, and the balance cycle. So you can have different names to it, but typically, for ease of understanding for the common investors, I would say that these are the 4 phases of business cycle, wherein you have a trough, you have an expansion phase, you have a peak, and you have a contraction phase. Now, if I have to give you an example of each of these phases, and I think the last year is a good example of the trough, wherein we had everything that had to go wrong was happening. In fact, the world was in a phase of the recession. Now, the things which identify the trough in the economy is basically wherein your consumer sentiments are at the bottom, and there is very less visibility of the consumers' incomes picking up, the jobs being created. That leads to the demand environment being very, very weak, and that leads to the whole industrial production and the industrial output being at the bottom of the cycle. Typically, you will find in the trough phase, it's very important that the central banks, they come in with a fiscal and a monetary support. And this is something which we saw the last year across the globe, wherein you had the central bankers putting in a lot of money in the system. This basically, I would say, it puts the seed for the next phase, which is the expansionary phase. And that is something wherein you find economies picking up, wherein you'll find the kind of the whole economic cycle is in a stage of recovery. Consumer confidence is picking up because now consumers have more visibility about their jobs, their incomes. You find the demand for homes, autos picking up. You'll find the industrial activity picking up because the demand is picking up after a phase of the trough. And also you find that interest rates would have bottomed out, wherein central banks would have kept the interest rates very low in order to support the growth. This is again something which we have been seeing for the last 6, 8, 9 months, wherein you're seeing the signs of interest rates bottoming out. Obviously now, as we stand, people are talking about interest rates going up, but definitely last 8, 10 months have been a time wherein the interest rates have bottomed out, and all the central banks have been supportive of the growth. The peak is, it goes without saying that is something wherein everything is an exuberance, and it's very dangerous to be sitting with a lot of those overheated stocks at the peak of the cycle. So we saw a glimpse of that in 2007 December or 2008 January, wherein everything was over the roof. Valuations and companies across market caps and sectors were over the roof. So basically, a peak is again signified by a simple fact that everyone in the media, social media, etc., is talking about that we are in a multi-year bull market. That is basically, I would say, the first signs of the peaks in the market, wherein everyone talks about that, this good time will continue forever. So when, everyone talks about the good cycles continuing forever, that is, I would say, the signs of, the peaking of the whole economic cycle. Typically, you will find that in this phase, you will find the growth of companies in the industries, which would have been very, very strong in the last several quarters because of the expansionary phase. The growth would be peaking out, wherein you will find maybe from growing at double digits, you will find these companies in the industrial space growing at single digits. Interest rates increase because there have been too much of inflationary pressure because of that expansionary phase. You will find inflation picking up, and also because of that, you will find central bankers coming in and increasing the interest rates. So these are all signs wherein that the signs of peaking out of the business cycle happens. Contraction, it's understandable. You find again that we are preparing for the next trough, wherein you will find consumer sentiments is declining sharply because of maybe the job losses or maybe the salary cuts, because companies might have to maintain the margins, and you'll find that salary cuts are happening, job losses are happening. You'll find that is leading to a decline in the demand, and that is leading to a declining industrial production. And obviously, you'll find that overall the things are setting up for the next trough. So this is basically, I would say, in brief, the business cycle which defines why sector rotations happen. Now, this slide basically answers some questions, which I think, most of the people on the street have been having over the last 12, 18 months, which is that why is the market so different from the economy? So, and I think, this is a common discussion which people have, that, markets are moving in a different direction and economies on the ground show a different picture. Now, one thing which all of us being in the market know that, the markets take into account the future earnings. They typically will be at least, if not more, at least 4 to 6 months before the economic picture starts improving. Or to put it in another way, the economy lags the equity markets by almost 4 to 6 months, if not more. So basically, if I have to say that, where the markets are now, they are factoring in where the economic picture will be, say, in April, May of next year. Where the markets were earlier were basically a factor of where they were factoring in where the economy will be at this point of time. Now, if you can see in this, basically, when you have a full recession in the economy, and that's a time, before that, you will find that the markets would have started picking up. So, typically you will find that the markets have started picking up, but the economy is making the fresh lows. And typically the sectors which do well during that point of time, are typically the financials, the consumer discretionary, because so these are the sectors which are defined over here are the ones which will do well in the next 1 year. So these sectors which are put up on the screen, these are the sectors which, if bought during these times, they outperform the broader market over the next 1 year, which means that if you're able to enter into the financials and the consumer discretionary and the cyclicals when the market is at the bottom of the cycle, over the next 1 year, you will find these sectors outperforming. Similarly, somewhere in the middle of the recovery, or you can say during the expansionary phase, you will find the IT sector doing very well. You'll find the basic materials, the metals doing very well, which in fact, as you mentioned, in the last 1 year, from September 2020 to September 21, the metals would have outperformed big time. So these are the sectors which do well during this expansionary phase. Typically at the top of the cycle, you'll find the energy stocks, the utility companies. These are the ones which do well over the next 1 year if they are bought at the top of the cycle. When the bear market sets in, the market starts giving the signs of the bear market, but you'll find that, the economy still looks good. So typically idea is at the peak of the cycle, you need to get into the defensives, which are like your healthcare, FMCG, consumer staples, which become the defensives. And these need to be bought at the peak of the cycle. Because as I said, that, the markets are at least 6 months before the economic cycles, it starts unfolding. So idea is to be there in these sectors, depending on what macro factors are going to impact their earnings. Now, this was something which was more of a broad-based, which gets reflected across the globe. If I draw the picture how it looks in India, and obviously the idea is that, how has the Indian equity markets played out with regard to these sectors. On your screen, you will have the last 15 years of the data of different sectoral indexes, how they have performed. The ones in green are basically the top three sectors in that year, and the ones in red are the bottom three sectors in that year. As you can see that, there is no sector which has consistently over a 5-year period been there in the top, or over a 5-year period been there at the bottom, which shows that, and I'm not talking about the top, but the top three. So there is no sector which has consistently been among the top three for 5 years, and there is no sector which has been at the bottom three for 5 years consistently. So this gives a very good indication that you need to move in and out of sectors depending on where the earning cycle is. As I mentioned about how during the bull market, bear market, different sectors work out. If you look at this table, you will find that during that whole phase of 2005 to 2007, wherein things were on a very, very strong uptrend, you found the capital goods, the basic materials, autos. These were the companies and these were the sectors which were outperforming consistently. Even something like the metals, these were all consistently outperforming. During the bad years, like when I said that during the bear markets, which are the sectors which will do well? If I look at 2008, if I look at 2011, if I look at 2015, so these were the years when the markets were extremely bad. During that time, you will find FMCG has outperformed, pharma, healthcare has outperformed, telecom has outperformed. Similarly, in 11, you will find the same sectors have outperformed, which is FMCG, pharma, and telecom. Similarly, in 2015, you'll find again, pharma, telecom, these are the sectors, and IT, which have outperformed. So the idea is that, this trend is something, it's not new. It's all there in front of us. It has repeated over and over again. And in fact, there's a famous quote that, wherein that, every time something happens, people say this time it's different. I think it's not different. It repeats again and again. Just that the winners and losers will be different by a different name, but the cycles repeat. The sectors, they get impacted by the same factors which I just mentioned. And this is something which has happened over the years. Now, as I was mentioning about, how sector rotation works and why sector rotation actually works in a portfolio. So as I mentioned, everything follows a cycle, and the valuation of companies is something which really draws our attention. And this is something which I keep telling investors, that keep an eye on the valuations, don't get carried away, because valuations of companies are something which gives you an indication that are we at a peak of the cycle for that particular sector, or are we at the bottom of the cycle for that particular sector. Because typically you'll find that companies, they look extremely cheap at the bottom of the cycle for that company, for that sector, and they will be overheated, and the valuations will be kind of over the roof for those sectors and companies in those sector when the cycle is at the peak of the cycle. One interesting thing which has happened, and I've been observing this over the last 8-10 years, is that the cycles have become very short. And this is one question which I keep getting from investors, that that how long is the cycle? Is it going to be a 1 year, 6 month, 1 quarter, or a couple of years? Now, if I look at the pattern over the years, I think the cycle has changed. The duration of the cycle has changed big time. Which means that, as I showed you in that previous table, that, you had 1 or 2 years of cycle for that particular sector. Now, what has happened is, because of excess liquidity in the global markets, something which is cheap and attractive, it gets overbought and expensive within a short span of time, because too much of money has been entering into that same idea, and too much of media attention has got there. And then, something which is cheap and attractive becomes fairly valued to expensive within a short period of time. But that doesn't mean that, you keep moving in and out of sectors and companies every month. Idea is to be there for at least a couple of quarters, if not a couple of years, but to keep an eye on the valuations. And that is something which draws our attention every time, we enter into sectors and companies, to keep an eye on the valuation of those sectors and companies. If I look at this chart in front of you, this actually highlights what I just mentioned, that the cycles have become very short. And these are the sectoral performances over the last 6 quarters. And I think, the last 6 quarters, we have seen everything. We have seen the bull market, the bear market, the bull market, pandemic, lockdowns, everything. And, you have seen that how, if you see over the last 6 quarters, there is no single sector which has consistently been the best performer for at least 2-3 quarters, which means that, there's a sector which is changing the guard almost every next quarter. Obviously, it's very difficult to be in and out of sectors so fast, which we also don't do. But this is just to give you an idea that, how the sector, the leaders have been changing extremely fast, and investors need to keep an eye on these patterns. Interestingly, because of this phase which was there, which had gone through the trough and then an expansionary phase, we saw sectors like metals, IT, the real estate, which has consistently kind of been outperformers. And these three have been kind of the very good performers over this time frame. And the usual suspects of underperformers are the consumer discretionary, the pharma and healthcare. Obviously, pharma and healthcare after the initial phase, post that they have been underperforming. So typically in an expansion phase, as I mentioned, you'll find the cyclicals, if I have to put it in that perspective, doing well, which is the metals, the real estate, autos, which have done very well. So this is a broad thesis on how the sector rotation works. And one thing which also is helpful for identifying where the value lies and is it kind of a space you would want to be in, is to see that is that particular segment of the market trying to see a multiple expansion because of things improving. And if I look at the different sectors, which we would have identified over the years, we would have typically identified sectors, wherein they would have been early on in their cyclical up move because their earnings were not growing, their ROEs were low, their margins were low, and because they were in that phase of the cycle. But obviously, if, as I mentioned, if you're following this whole sector patterns and sector rotation, if you're able to identify these sectors and companies in that sector, wherein, you are foreseeing that now the margins are going to improve, earnings are going to improve because either they're entering into the new geographies or demand is picking up, or companies have launched some new products because of which it will be taken out of that particular phase, you will find that the whole P multiple expansion happens. And that is the whole transition which happens, wherein you'll find those value stocks migrating from being a value stock to a growth stock over a period of time. This whole thing we have seen happening, whether we talk about the chemical sector, we talk about the IT sector, we talk about the pharma sector, being bought at the right time, seeing that migration of the P multiple happening and getting into that growth phase. But idea is that, when you get those companies in the growth phase, you need to keep an eye that when the earnings will start declining, because, when the earnings start declining after being there in the growth phase for some time, there can also be a P contraction. Just the way a P multiple expansion happens, there also happens a P contraction, wherein that, if you're not decreasing your allocation in those sectors and companies at the right time, you would be actually sitting with a very, very expensive portfolio in your expensive basket of companies in your portfolio. Now, this is one of my favorite slides because, investors keep asking that, whatever we have discussed is things in the past. What lies ahead? That, which are the sectors which we see that will do well in the next coming years, or if not years, in the next 4 to 6 quarters, which are the sectors which will see this earnings upcycle? We believe that 4 or 5 sectors are there where very, very strong earnings upcycle will continue. And we have been bullish on these for the last 1 year. And we believe that we are still somewhere in the middle, or maybe a bit early, slightly before the mid mark of it, to see the kind of the peak happening in these sectors. So there's still a long headway for growth for companies in this sector. The first sector which we like is the real estate and the home improvement space. And this is something which we had gone bullish almost a year back. And in fact, when we had gone bullish in that sector, we had very, very strong reservations against it because, we were coming out of that bad patch of last 4 or 5 years of the real estate sector. So, when investors get to know that, we are bullish on real estate, it's a very, very big question mark. And that why real estate? Our thesis was very strong that, the sector has seen a lot of consolidation over the last 6-7 years. You have seen almost 85% of the small builders going out of business. they have been forced to either sell their projects to the larger players or maybe form the joint ventures. Also, thanks to the implementation of Herrera, you have better policy execution with regard to execution and completion of the projects and handing it over to the end consumers. The low interest rates and the home loan side is again something which is very, very conducive for the demand picking up. And more interestingly, the demand pattern has been very, very different compared to the last cycle, wherein, in the last cycle, the demand was more from the investors. And in this cycle, we are seeing the demand from the end users. And typically, when the demand comes from the end users, it is a more sustainable demand, which will reflect for a much longer period of time compared to the investor demand, because investor demand it leads to a big bubble very fast, whereas consumer-led demand doesn't lead to a big bubble very fast. So all these were basically the factors which kind of got us attracted in the real estate and the home improvement space. And I think, this is here to stay. Whether we talk about the pure play, the real estate companies, we talk about the electric and the wiring companies, we talk about the home appliance companies, we talk about the paints or the plywood companies, I think all of them will benefit with this whole upcycle which is there in the real estate side. The other side to the real estate is also industrial activity, wherein, if you're looking at government pushing for manufacturing to pick up in the country, you'll find industries being set up also, which also need all the ancillary products which I just mentioned, which goes into the real estate, which is your electric, wiring, paints, cement, ply, etc. So this is one sector which we are very bullish on, and we believe that this is one sector which is a core part of our portfolio allocation at this point of time with regard to the sector rotation. IT and IT services is again one sector wherein, we have been bullish for the last 12 to 15 months, and we remain definitely bullish for the next 12 to 15 months, if not longer, because our thesis is that IT again as a sector has not even reached the mid cycle of its upcycle. So if I have to say that how long will the IT cycle last, I think this is like a 36 to 48 month cycle, and we have just seen just the initial 12 to 15 months of that. The reason for that is that, with the pandemic, the fact is that more and more companies across the globe have understood the need for having a digital presence, the need for migrating your business to the cloud, and the need for IT implementation across sectors, whether we're talking about financials, healthcare, manufacturing. It has been seen that, the demand is there everywhere. And the interesting part is that, when we talk to the managements of Indian IT companies, they have been giving us very, very optimistic outlook with regard to the type of companies which are engaging with them. There have been companies which have never implemented IT on their platform, and they have chalked out the plan for getting those businesses into digital form, or maybe having their cloud migration. And right now it's just like 15 to 20% of what potential lies. So we believe there's a large headroom for growth over there, and this continues to be our one of the sector themes which we like to play at this point of time. Auto and auto ancillary is one contrarian bet, and I would say that auto and auto ancillary is one sector which is I would say we are again a bit early on there. And when I talk to, in fact, we have been building our positions over there for the last couple of months. And when investors ask that why auto and auto anc, there's a shortage of semiconductors. You go to the wholesalers and you book any car, there's a 6 month to 12-month waiting period. Then how do you see the auto numbers being good? And when they see the monthly numbers, the numbers look horrible. So the point is that all these are already in the price. And as I said that equity markets, the actual business or the economy, they lag the equity markets by 6 months, if not more. So where we are right now, we need to see where this sector will be 6 to 12 months from now. Now the question comes that are you going to see a shortage of semiconductors even after 1 year? There will be definitely some shortage, but there will be a lot of improvement compared to where we stand at this point of time. To get back to normal supply, it will take at least 18 to 24 months. But from now, over the next 6 to 18 months, you will see the supply of semiconductors improving drastically, which will lead to the productions picking up. Most of the OEMs are right now operating at 40-50% capacity, and auto ancillaries are also working in a similar type of a capacity. Exports are also being hurt a lot. You don't have much of exports on the auto ancillary side because similar demand environment and constraints are there in the Western side. So beyond 6 months, 9 months, 12 months, you'll find this whole auto industry operating at 70, 80, 100 to even 120% capacity at some point in time, because there's a huge pent up demand. Now, that time you'll find these quarters, which we are right now, say the first quarter, second quarter, or third quarter of FY22 becoming like the base. And on a Y on Y and a quarter on quarter, you'll find the earnings growing exponentially. And that's the time you'll find all the media channels, or maybe all the social media channels, they'll be abuzz with optimism on the auto sector. So the idea is to pick them up now at a good valuation, wherein that you are getting the stocks at your price, at your valuation, and to be with them once the cycle picks up and you are participating in the upside. Because see, typically what we believe is that we like to be there when others are not there, and we like to decrease our allocations in those sectors when everybody wants to be there. Because valuation is something which goes over the roof when there's a herd mentality which picks up in any sector. So after auto, the fourth sector, which I think is a common theme for many on the street, is pharma and chemicals. It has had its upcycle over the last 6 months. I think it has been going through a phase wherein it has not done anything much. In fact, pharma and chemicals would have underperformed for the last 6-8 months after seeing a superb rally in the first half of 20 FY21. But I believe that this is one sector which has a long runway for growth, and this will come from the whole China plus one opportunity which is unfolding. And if I look at the Indian companies, I think most of the companies have understood that you cannot depend on China even for the raw materials which are coming to your factories, and more backward integration is required. And the Western customers are appreciating this fact that the Indian companies have come of age, and they are now looking at a complete backward forward integration. And that gives the Western customers also the comfort that just migrating to Indian companies is not going to solve an issue if the Indian companies are dependent on China. So if you're getting the companies in India which are not dependent much on China, that gives a very, very big comfort to the Western customers as they are trying to diversify their sourcing away from there. So I think pharma and chemicals is one space which valuations might not be cheap, but I think this is one space which will continue to do well over the next 12, 18 to 24 months because of the opportunity which is coming up along the way. So this was about sector rotation. And if I just take a couple of minutes on the company rotation. Now, company rotation is a part of our strategy. And this basically is about being in and out of companies within the same sector. Now, the point is that, all the stocks or all the companies in one sector, they do not move in tandem in the same direction. You'll find some company which has got maybe some announcement or some positive news being the hot favorite on the street, and the street will then ignore some other company which is there in the sector. So our job is to find that, where the value lies, and to pick up the companies wherein we believe there's a huge mispriced opportunity, and try to be out of companies which become kind of the hot favorites on the street. Typically what we see in the company rotation is, and why we do company rotation is that, with so much of noise on the street, it becomes sometimes we have seen it that, some good developments in the company, they go completely unnoticed. And it's only very late that they realize that, this company or this sector was actually going through a good transformation. And one very good example in this case is that the whole Tata Group companies is something which has done very well for us. In fact, we have almost like 18 to 20% allocation to the Tata Group companies in our portfolios across the different sectors. Whether we talk about IT, we talk about the power sector, we talk about auto, we have exposure in the Tata Group companies across all the sectors. The whole thought process was that Tata as a group was always perceived to be very slow, very the laid back, Most of their companies were sitting with high leverage, except TCS. Obviously, TCS is a different ball game. Whether we talk about Tata Steel, Tata Motors, Tata Power, they were all plagued with very high leverage on their books. Something which went unnoticed for a long time is the whole kind of the instructions, if not instructions, but the whole thought process in the Tata Sons group, post Mr. Chandra being there at the helm, is that, over the next 5 years, 10 years, can we decrease the leverage to practically nil in all our group companies? Now, that is something wherein the Tata management has been working in all the group companies. And we believe that a huge decrease in the leverage on the balance sheet is a big case for P multiple expansion. And this is something which has happened in all the Tata group companies, whether we talk about Tata Steel, Tata Motors, Tata Power, is something which has really happened. And so thanks to, our keeping an eye on these factors, we were kind of early investors in all these companies. And we have made 4-5x returns over there. Even at this point of time, we believe that, there's a large headroom for growth, because still a lot of developments are happening over there. And this is something wherein, I keep saying that, we need to keep an eye on this whole company rotations. So these are, so this is, I just try to put two examples of, company rotations. One is, moving out of Maruti to Tata Motors DVR. And the second is moving to SBI and decreasing HDFC Bank, and eventually moving out of HDFC Bank. Now coming to Maruti to Tata Motors, this is something wherein, last year in the months of April, May, we had picked up Maruti. And obviously, because that was a safe bet, considering the valuations, it was quoting at 2 times standard deviation below the historical averages. We entered Maruti at around 4,700, 4,800. Somewhere in the months of, September, like August, September of last year, Maruti, when it was at 7,000, it looked fairly valued. If I had to look at the next 18 months numbers. But we wanted to be overweight on the auto sector, because we believe this sector is going to do well. So when I compared it with the Tata Motors DVR at that point of time, so DVR was quoting at a 48.50 rupees. So it looked like a very compelling switch, wherein that, you had, on one hand, you had a fairly valued auto company, and on the other hand, you had a equally large auto company, which has its issues in the past. And because of that, the valuations were so cheap. So the downside looked very limited. So we made that switch within the same sector, trying to basically do a company rotation. If you see where we stand now, Maruti still hovers at 7,000 after almost 1 year. And a Tata Motors DVR has gone up from 48 rupees to like a 250 rupees. So there has been a 5x return in a company in the same sector, wherein, you switched between a Tata Motors DVR, you entered into Tata Motors DVR, moving out of something like the Maruti. A similar switch we had done, getting into SBI and gradually decreasing our HDFC Bank, and eventually moving out of HDFC Bank. And I remember, when we bought SBI at 160 level, so last year, there was a lot of question marks that, why SBI? Because, it's a PSU, it hardly does. There's so much of NPA. Now, this is again, where we keep an eye out in the sector rotation, that, PSUs as a PSU banks was something which had gone through the bad patch of 2017, 18, 19. Now, all those were in the numbers, because of which you are getting these banks at 0.3, 0.4 price to book. And the point is that, so you're getting the country's the largest bank at 0.4 price to book. And if I take the value of its subsidiaries, so SBI had your insurance, it had its mutual fund business, it had its SBI cards. So if I take the value of its businesses, you are practically getting the bank free of cost. So the point was that, do I see more downside from here? Answer was no. There's very limited downside from these levels. Whenever things open up, improve, it can only get better from here. So with that thesis, we entered into SBI, and gradually along the way, we decreased our HDFC Bank. I would say it was like a harakiri by investment standards, because exiting HDFC Bank and buying SBI was like a big harakiri, and, investors were like, big question mark that, you are buying SBI and exiting something like an HDFC Bank. But on hindsight, if you look, there's a huge alpha between how SBI has performed from our entry and how HDFC Bank has performed in that whole phase. So it's again, trying to show that how keeping an eye on the valuations helps to do this company rotation, helps to do this sector rotation. And this is the way we try to, be active in our portfolio management. And this is something we have believed that has gone through the different earning cycle, business cycle. And definitely this is something which we continue to implement in our portfolios. So just one last kind of a summary, if I have to put it in this way, that, that how do we implement this sector rotation, company rotation strategy in our portfolios? We are happy to say that, we follow an active style of management. We are long-term investors, but I believe a long-term is made of many small and medium terms. And it's a summation of what you have done in the portfolio in the top 4-5 high conviction sectors. We keep following a company rotation within the selected sectors, depending on, how is the valuation comfort and the risk reward for each of these companies which we own. Apart from the macro, the cycle, the business cycle, which I mentioned, we also keep an eye on the policy changes, because, sometimes the policy changes, it really makes a big impact on how that particular sector will do. So sometimes we keep an eye on the policy changes also, if that could impact for the positive or for the negative that particular sector. We have several examples of this over the years, wherein policy changes have actually made that sector very attractive for the medium to long term. So this is again something which you keep an eye on. We actively book profit, and this is something I keep saying, that we don't mind booking profit. I'm a long-term investor, but I don't mind booking profits if I find the valuations are over the roof, because booking profits is something very important. And I keep saying this to investors, that entering a stock is the most easiest job. The difficult job is to take out your profits. And as they say, unless you take out the money from the market, the money is not yours, it's the market's. So we keep booking profit from time to time. We do decrease our allocation. It's not like, we'll sell everything at one go. We decrease our allocation from time to time. And in companies, example, Bajaj Finance, Finserv, all of us would have loved it for ages. I've been a fan of Bajaj Finserv Finance for last 10-15 years. But there would be at least 4-5 times I would have decreased my allocation to the group when the valuations have been over the roof, and have increased my allocations aggressively when the valuations have become comfortable. So idea is to not fall in love with the company, but keep an eye on the valuation, keep an eye on the sector rotation which is happening, and also take those active calls from time to time. And lastly, we do keep cash calls. We do take cash calls, and that is something, which again differentiates us, wherein that, we actively keep an eye on the whole macro picture. And if the writing is on the wall that, things are getting from bad to ugly, we don't mind sitting with, 10, 15, 20% cash in our portfolio. And it's equally important to put that cash back to work, because if you're sitting with a 15-20% cash for 6 months, definitely you will have a big headache with regard to your portfolio performance. So it's equally important to put that money back to the work. And thankfully, we have been good at it. If I have to say that, being agile, being active, we have been able to kind of go into cash and also put that cash back to work very fast. So this is the broad kind of, the thought process around sector rotation, business cycles, about company rotation, and how we have been implementing it in our portfolios. And we believe that, this is the way to go, considering the world is changing very fast. And it's important to be there where the things are happening. We'll be more than happy to answer any questions, from the group.
There was a lot of questions have come. And in fact, we will take it one by one.
Sure.
I'll take the first question. How many years you are practicing the strategy, and what kind of alpha you have created so far?
I have been following this sector rotation at least for the last 7 years, wherein, I've been managing the portfolios. And it has seen, it has seen different cycles, whether we talk about IL&FS crisis, we talk about GST implementation, we talk about demon, we talk about pandemic. It has seen those events, and it has gone through all these events. And the point is that, over this period, it has kind of, the portfolios have given like 18 to 19% absolute return. Annualized return, 18 to 19% annualized return, compared to a benchmark return of around 8 to 9%. So you can say that, there has been a huge kind of an alpha of almost 10-11% over a 7-year period. And if I look at some of the older portfolios, I think, definitely this is something which has really gone through the business cycles and given alpha for the investors.
Can we move on to the next question?
Sure, sure.
The investing strategy helps you to identify value or growth ideas.
I think it's a portfolio. It's basically kind of, it's trying to blend both, wherein, as I said, we try to blend both value and growth. And you will find within the same sector, you'll find companies like within the same sector, whether we talk about the chemical sector, you'll find Philips Carbon or a Navin Fluorine, both in our portfolio. So I think, there's a blend of both value and growth in our portfolio. And the idea is that, wherever we find a mispriced opportunity, we would not hesitate to kind of make that allocation. Typically, this style of picking up the sectors or picking up the companies is something, which I would say is keeping an eye on the valuations always. And we don't buy expensive companies for sure.
Which sector and stock rotation can we assume your portfolio will have? From your presentation, people have taken some clues and they are asking the churn will be very high.
Yeah, so I keep getting this question that, the churn ratio is expected to be very high, considering that, you are going to actively, move in and out of companies. If I look at my last 7 years track record, wherein, first 5 years at IFL and the last 2 years at Quest, wherein, this return, which I'm talking about, the 7 years of sector rotation, which I've done, 5 years at IFL, managing the IFL multi-cap, and last 2 years, managing the Quest flagship and the Quest multi. Over this 7-year period, the average churn has been around 35%. So it's not like a kind of a huge churn. I think that's a pretty normal average churn for the industry.
The top, hello, am I audible? Sorry.
Yeah. I can hear you.
The top-down investing is believed to be complex, dynamic, and time-consuming. How it is better than the conventional bottoms-up approach?
See, I would say that, this is something I keep saying that, in investing, there is the right style and the wrong style. Any style which one can spend time on and refine and is able to implement over and over again, I think that is what one investor needs to follow. Having said that, I would say that if I look at my attribution, just to answer this question, if I look at my attribution over the years, 85% of my alpha has come from bottom-up selection. Now, if I look at that attribution, the point which comes is that, then top-down is not important. But if I look at the remaining 15%, it shows that, this whole selection of these companies with the bottom-up, they have created alpha because I was able to pick the right sector. And within that sector, I picked up the right company. Now, I can pick up a very good company, but in the wrong cycle, then, for 6 months, 12 months, investors will get frustrated. It will not add any alpha. So the idea is that first, look at the top-down picture, and then within that need to see which is the best company. And that is where I would say 80% of our job is. In fact, if I look at the way we construct our portfolio, 80% of our job goes in, identifying the businesses, identifying the companies, meeting managements, etc., etc. And we have been tracking these companies for ages now. But 20% of the time really makes a difference wherein, looking at the macro picture. And that defines that, out of those 150 or 180 companies which we have under coverage, when do we want to buy which names?
What is your approach to identify undervalued securities in your portfolio? How do you select those? Is what the next question is.
See, undervalued. So basically, one needs to see that, this undervaluation is, or maybe this, the attractively priced valuation is for what reasons? Is it something which is specific to the company? Is it something which is specific to the sector, or is it something because of the broader market? The whole sector is going through a down cycle. That is why it is undervalued. If it is something that, it is something specific to the company, whereas others in the sector are doing well, this is the only company which is undervalued. we need to see that, what are the reasons behind that? Is it that in the past something has been hurting it, and things are improving at that point of time? Do we start looking at that business, or is it something that historically over the last 10 years it has always remained undervalued because of maybe corporate governance or the management quality or the margins being weak or the ROE is not able to improve? So we need to see at what factors that undervaluation is. So it's like very, very subjective on a case to case basis that, is that undervaluation vis-a-vis itself compared to its past, or is it vis-a-vis the broader sector, or is it vis-a-vis the broader in the market?
And going through your presentation, people asked, you have talked about the real estate sector on which you are bullish. You have talked about paint, ceramics, and other allied sectors which will be the beneficiary of real estate recovery. Are you not bullish on real estate companies? Is what someone is asking.
Yeah. So we have been bullish on the real estate, and in fact, we have a couple of names in our portfolio, which is the real estate play. So we have both the real estate companies as well as the ancillaries. So we have both of them in our portfolio. In fact, if I look at the overall allocation between the real estate, home improvement, and the cement, it will be roughly around 14 to 15%.
The second question is on the portfolio on the IT side, and in fact, the mid-cap IT stocks have gone through the roof on the valuation side. And what is your approach on large caps? Everyone knows two companies are there. And in the mid-cap category of IT, what is your outlook? And mid-cap IT companies are going to grow more than the large cap. What is your outlook?
See, I believe, as rightly mentioned, I think, valuation is no longer attractive there. And I think, if I look at the whole IT space, where it was 15, 18 months back, we have come a long way on the valuation front. And valuations are where we stand today are on the higher side, which the sector has seen in the last 15, 20 years. But I would say we need to compare now the IT sector valuation maybe to the FMCG sector valuation. It's a bit kind of a very, very different way of looking at it. But the idea is that, IT sector is now going through a major upcycle, as I mentioned, that, and this trend is going to continue over the next 18, 24, 36 months. And they are talking about growing at 14 to 18%. And there are some companies which are talking about growing at 18 to 20% also over the next 24 months. Now, if you're looking at businesses which are growing at 18, 20%, there's no reason why they should not get the high multiples. If the broader market is willing to give 40, 50, 60p to kind of the FMCG companies. But obviously, you can say that, they go through the cycles, whereas FMCGs are always in demand. But I would say that, definitely this high valuation will remain. I don't see a reason why the high valuation in the IT sector will not remain. From here, you will not see the big returns which you have seen in the last 1 year in the IT sector, because the P multiple expansion has happened. From here, the returns will be in line with what the earnings growth is, which means that, if companies are growing at 15, 18%, you will find a similar type of a return from those companies, because there are two pieces of returns. One is the returns linked to the earnings, and the returns linked to the PE multiple expansion. I think that P multiple expansion linked return is already done. From here on, you will see the returns which will be linked to the earnings. Within that, as mentioned, there are many mid-cap IT companies which will grow faster than the large cap companies. If I look at my broader portfolio, I would have within the IT bucket, I would have roughly 60% into the large cap IT companies and around 40% into the mid cap IT companies. Even on the mid cap, they are the large mid cap companies. So the reason for that again is that the whole sector is going through a big problem of attrition, a big problem of the wage hikes, and I think the larger guys have a better balance sheet to kind of take that into charge compared to the small IT companies. So I would still be with the mid cap and the large cap IT companies.
The next question is on your contra bet auto and auto ancillary. And since it is going through a rough time because of the semiconductor problems now they are going through, and you have also told that it will take about 18 months to come out of it. What kind of allocation you have for auto ancillary in your portfolio?
As of now, I would be having roughly around 6-7% in the auto and auto anch, which I'm looking at increasing it to anywhere between 8 to 10%. So this is the broad allocation, and I believe that there is no hurry to build that allocation because, as I said, the whole shortage of semiconductors and kind of the demand environment, this will continue to linger for some time, and I think this extra weightage which I'm looking at adding on to the auto and auto anch side, this can be done over the next 1 quarter. So from current 6-7%, looking at taking it up to 8 to 10%.
Another question has come on the pharma and chemicals. Pharma is one sector. The investor is definitely convinced. On the chemicals, it has gone up by 10 to 50 times in the last 5 to 7 years. Still, are you bullish on chemicals as it is correcting hugely in the last few days?
So I think the last 1 month or maybe the last couple of months, whatever correction we have seen in the chemical space, I think that was much required because it was kind of an over exuberance which was building up there, especially in the mid cap, small cap chemical names. I would say that valuations need to come back to the normal, and many of those names had gone up over the roof. Having said that, the way the chemical stocks have given returns in the last 5 years, X returns, whether it's 8x or 10x or 20x returns, from here, those 10x, 20x returns in the next 5 years is very unlikely. But as a sector, they will outperform the broader market. Because the point is that, we need to look for sectors which will do better than the broader market, where earnings will come. But as I said, that chemical as a sector has a large headroom for growth, and we need to keep an eye on the valuations again and again. I keep saying this, that in fact in the chemical space also there are many chemical names which are not expensive. In fact, we have some names in our portfolio which are still quoting at 14-15 p, and there are names again which are quoting at 40-45 p. So I have both of them in my portfolio, and I believe there's a large opportunity in the one where valuation is cheap, because there, if I look at the PEG ratio, it is slightly below 1, which means that its earnings are going to grow faster than what it is looking at this point of time. So I think you will not get those big X multiplier returns in chemicals from where we stand. And this is something I keep telling investors, that the last 1.5 year return has to get normalized over the next 12, 18, 24 months across the market. Because just to give you simple numbers, if in the last 1 year people have made 70% return in their portfolios, and if historically we see that in the long run, over a 5-year, 7-year period, typical return made is 18 to 20%, which means that this 70% return over the next 36, 48, 60 months has to come down annualized to anywhere between 15 to 20%, which means there will be some periods of the time correction, if not the price correction, wherein you'll find 6 months of hardly anything happening, and that's a time wherein the valuations will again look attractive. So same thing will happen in the chemical space also, wherein that big up move has happened, but it is a space wherein you will find more and more earnings coming on the upside. In fact, there are some names which have put up good capex, and most of those capex will come on stream in FY23, which means you'll again see from FY23-24 onwards a large jump in the whole earnings upcycle.
The moderation of the return expectation, the point you have talked about, is definitely very relevant now. On the PSU, sir, and the next question has come. You have SBI in the portfolio, and other than SBI, is there any other than the government banks? Are you bullish on any other PSUs? Is what someone wants to know.
See, PSUs as a whole, as a theme, is good to play, but I would not still allocate beyond 8-10% for PSUs. And I anyways have around 7-8% of SBI in my portfolio. And the reason for being with SBI from 160 levels is because he has the strongest balance sheet, and he has all the right things going for him when the earnings upcycle or the economic cycle picks up. Definitely, there are many other PSU banks which are the next rung of PSU banks, which are also good. But obviously, I cannot end up buying everything. So if I had to pick up the best, I had to be with the leader, which is SBI. There are some good names in the defense sector, which again, investors looking at can explore. Defense as a theme is also very good, and obviously, government PSUs have a dominance over there. And obviously, I wouldn't say they have a monopoly because now many of the private sector companies have also opened up for the defense place. But I would say that some good names are there in the PSU in the defense play. Apart from that, I would not actually put my hand in anything else, because whether we talk about the companies like NTPC, Coal India, or things like that, there are too much of policy announcements which happen there. And I would not want to expose my portfolio to things where, the policy announcements are there.
So the last question, because of the time constraint, I cannot take more questions. Any question which has not been answered by Aniruddha, we will ensure that it goes to the AMC, and Mr. Aniruddha will definitely reply to those questions. And the last question is on the cash levels. You are not afraid to take the cash parts. And what is your cash levels at the portfolio now at the aggregate level is what someone wants to know.
So at this point, we have around 6-7% cash level. And I don't see that going up drastically from here, because though the last 1 month people would have been unnerved by the market fall, but I think this is something which we have been saying for the last 6-8 months, that entering the market at these levels, whether at 15,000, 16,000, 17,000, 18,000, you should be ready for a 5-10% correction in the market, and that 5-10% correction will happen within a short span of time. The problem is that people typically say that we'll enter the market on a dip, but when the dip happens, people run away. But the point is that I keep saying that you be ready for a dip, and that time you should not get afraid to deploy, because these are the usual ups and downs which happen in the market in the long run when the bull market is there in place.
Do you allow STP is what someone wants to know. Do you allow?
Yeah, we have STP. We have STP in our portfolio, and that continues to be there, because investors who want to put in their money over the next 4-5 months can definitely take advantage of that.
So is it for 6 months, and is there any duration for this? STP?
So max is up to 5 months.
All right. 12.5 lakhs.
Up to 5. So basically 50 lakhs being the minimum. So clients can put in 10 lakhs over the 5 months.
All right. Okay. 5 months deployment. Okay. Aniruddha, in fact, you are a unique fund manager who combines the top down and the bottoms up, and you are very successful in your earlier avatar also. You are definitely creating huge alpha for the customers. And I'm sure that this webinar has been very useful for the participants, and I would take this chance for thanking all the participants who have come in line for this webinar. And I would like to thank you, Mr. Aniruddha, and it was a very, very straightforward, hit the nail kind of a presentation. Thank you very much. Thanks to the participants. Good evening.
Yeah, thank you everyone. Bye. Happy Diwali to all of you.